But again, it's quality service that you want, and you don't want to strangle. And I would say strangle because this is what I used to tell my people. Our consultants are extension of staff, so we cannot pretend that they will fund their operations. We have to pay them on time, and we have to pay them fairly for what we are asking them and the liability that they have as our consultants for design or construction or quality control.
Welcome back to the 20th Century Engineer. The conversation that we've been having in the series of podcasts that we're producing have focused on those individuals in the civil engineering largely, but the AEC community who want to have impact, want to see change, want to be impactful in what it is that they do. There are a lot of individuals out there that think they want to be impactful. Certainly, mid-career, young career individuals are looking for a path, a clear path to success, and that's what we're trying to provide. One of those pathways, of course, because of the importance of being diverse, inclusive, and equitable in what we do in the workplace that we have, and to be supportive so that everybody can be the best version of themselves, so that they can achieve the success that they define for themselves, and in turn for the client and for the company. I've asked a young lady who I've known for more years than I'm going to admit, and she doesn't have to admit it either. Eileen's been through the doors at the university, but most recently we reconnected through my activities at ASE, and her activities, drumroll please, as a transportation secretary for Puerto Rico. And she's just completed that term of service, that tour of duty, as it were. So, Eileen, it's great to have you. It's great to see you. It's great to talk to you again. How would you like those that have tuned in today to remember you?
Wow. Well, it is awesome to be here with you. And yes, we met when I was in the Army Corps of Engineers in Vicksburg, Mississippi. That was my first career startup. That was my first job, right? I was a research
Yeah.
civil engineer at ERDIC, and that's how we met when I was going through my master's program at Mississippi State University. Very proud to say that. And yeah, so life has had a lot of twists and turns since we met many years ago. And yes, I finished my tour of duty in December of 2024. I was the Secretary of Transportation for Puerto Rico for 4 years. That was our term. And yeah, I've done the federal work when I met you at the Army Corps of Engineers. Before that, I worked at NASA and Disney World as well as a student. But definitely life changed once I went into the Army Corps and then Kimley-Horn, which I was a consultant for 15 years. And then I think life definitely changes after you do public service for the time being. And my service was 4 years. I'm very proud of the work that I did. I was the first woman appointed as Secretary of Transportation for Puerto Rico. So it wasn't just an amazing responsibility. It was a great honor to be appointed the first woman by the governor, and definitely one of the best jobs I've ever had in my career.
Well, and my friends in Puerto Rico, and I have several, uh, always said to me it was obvious that you were appointed because of your attributes and abilities. That, and I don't. This is not about politics, but you were not a DEI hire. You were the best qualified individual for the job, and as such, the governor really wasn't in a position to have anybody but you take the task on. Of course, we talk about it being, or I talk about it being a tour of duty, because you had to make some sacrifices in order to take that responsibility on. And so I guess what I'd like to do is talk with you about how you have found the various AEC workplaces in terms of facilitating your successes.
But I think I'm really glad you mentioned that because I had never been in public service or politics. And so I was working at Kimley-Horn leading the Puerto Rico office when I was called from the governor's talent search team. And they asked me for my resume, and I hesitated because we we know what the public service and being a political appointee involves, and you stop being a private person, you become a public figure. and you are subject to a lot of criticism and a lot of public scrutiny. And my career had been very positive since the start. I'm a big STEM advocate for women and Latinas. And so I saw it as an opportunity for that work that I do as an advocate and in the engineering field to be projected and to be highlighted and to help other women go into the field, right? Because we're still
Right.
Latinas, particularly 2 to 3% of the STEM workforce. So when you go into anywhere or any space, you are looked at, oh goodness, she's the silver unicorn in the group. And so that sometimes is a little intimidating.
Yeah.
But going
Yeah.
into public service was a huge sacrifice, not just because you don't have any privacy, but my family as well. They also become subject to scrutiny and to criticism as well. And then you also have financial impacts. You do have some pay cuts and some information, and I think there's something going
Whoa,
on
whoa, slow down,
on,
slow down.
on
Some
our back.
pay cuts? I understand you took a pretty substantial pay cut to take on the responsibilities, take on the
Yes,
secretary's responsibility.
yeah, some pay cuts, but no, definitely. It was worth it, but it was definitely an impact to our family and to myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely one of those things that you do it knowing what it's going to entail, and you're okay with it because you make the decision to take that risk and to serve your country. You don't do it because you're going to make more money. You do it because you're going to do something greater than you.
Right. Of course, civil engineers do that anyway. Everything we do is about improving the quality of life, supporting economic development, addressing hazards, protecting the community, the health, safety, and welfare of the public, as we say in a licensure environment. So it just attunes to what we do, who we are, what we're bred to do. And I'm going to ask you for affirmation and maybe even amplification when you said you found it rewarding, even with the
Mhm.
sacrifices you and the family had to make in order to take on this responsibility that the governor asked you to take on, you found it rewarding. Could you give me an example or two?
Definitely. So I was okay. So I wasn't just the first woman to do this, but the department had a 107-year history, and we were starting the work in one of our most difficult times in history, right after Hurricane Maria, right after
Right.
the earthquakes. We were in the pandemic because I was appointed right as we are ending that first year, 2020, of the pandemic, and
Yeah.
so
The trifecta.
yeah, everything was complicated. It looked like it was going to be a huge challenge. And I remember my husband telling me, "This is the time. You've always talked about. I always wanted to do this job. I gotta tell you a little secret is that when I was young, I told my mom that if I ever worked for the government, I would be Secretary of Transportation.
Seriously.
Why? I don't know. Why did I
Lack
say
of,
that when I was a little girl?
lack
So
of information would be my guess.
yeah, a big dream, not knowing what that meant.
Yeah.
But definitely, when I said that to a colleague after an engineering conference many years ago, and that colleague was actually the one that was working with the governor in looking for talent, and that's who called me. So that also taught me that yes, I had moved to Puerto Rico, back to Puerto Rico, because I moved back to the island in 2014 and opened the Kimley-Horn office to grow it and to establish ourselves in the Caribbean. And so you never know what is ahead. So I think that opportunity to become the first woman secretary in such a historical and difficult times that we were in Puerto Rico was like a testament of I've worked really hard since I started working outside of my island. I came back, and that was part of the purpose. I didn't know it at the time, but that was part of what I had lined up that I was going to go through. And after preparing myself as a research engineer, a design engineer, I had done inspection, I had done construction, a lot of leadership opportunities within the engineering community and nonprofit organizations. I had finished my master's degree, I had my PE license. All these different things contributed to what it is today and to that moment. And so it was all like rewarding, but at the same time, now you have this big job to do. So it's not over. You've done all these things, but now you have to prove yourself even harder because you're representing the governor, the island, and the 4,000 employees that you have on your Department of Transportation. So it became greater than I had ever imagined that I was going, or anything that I ever imagined that I was going to do. So definitely the takeaways were I've always been working really hard disregarding the whole thing about I'm a woman or I'm a Latina or I'm from Puerto Rico, that didn't really meant to me that was an obstacle. It just meant that I had to probably work a little bit harder to get to where I wanted. And so also when I was appointed, I also showed people that yes, you have to be qualified no matter what. You don't necessarily need to be in politics to go into this role, because that's what I thought as a young girl. How am I going to get there if I'm not in politics? Well, the governor looked at my resume within the other candidates, and I had interviews with the talent search committee and then with him, and that's when I was appointed. So
Yeah.
no matter what those connections are into, sometimes people don't believe that can be done. It was a testament that the governor was looking for qualified people that were in the field, that were qualified and they were professionals that wanted to get back to their island. It didn't have to be that you were checking a box on all the politics and maybe campaigns or fundraisers that you did.
Right.
So it gave me
Right.
hope of,
Right.
you know what, we are going in the right direction.
Right. Well, that's great to know. And to I guess reframe some of what you said. What I heard you say is that you took ownership of your career. And so
Yeah.
you did the things to develop the expertise, different jobs, different expanded education. You looked at licensure. You got engaged, and you didn't let the obstacles when they arose to deter you. You developed an attitude, a mindset of perseverance, of
Mhm.
commitment, and all of this rests on your shoulders. While you may have had individuals along the way that supported you in the process, at the end of the day, it still rested to you to achieve what it is that you wanted to, and by and large, you have.
Yes.
As you've moved back into the AEC environment, the consulting environment, and
Mhm.
more specifically,
Yes.
uh,
The dark side.
have you found things
Remember,
changed since you
they
were
call it
there?
the dark side. Yeah, the dark side.
Yeah, the dark side. It's all perspective.
It's not really the dark
I
side.
actually, I like consulting. I
I
was,
do too, but
yeah,
that's what they call it. And I'm like, I remember the 15 years I was a consultant being very bright. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't really dark.
no. If anything, the government's the dark side. But anyway,
Well, some people say
maybe
that.
it's academia that's the dark side. I don't know. All I know is I like the creativity of consulting. It's what I wanted to do, and I was fortunate enough that being at Mississippi State through its metamorphosis over the decades, I was able to do it. I've had three consulting firms. I've had a major manufacturing firm. I've consulted on design projects around the world. And have had installations of the systems we designed put in around the world, and it's been fun. I mean, I've got a career that I did not intend to have and would not swap for anything. But this isn't about me. This is about you. I,
No, but this is important because you are inspiring to all of us that were starting up. So look at
yeah.
this. We ended up being here together. I would have never thought, but it's a great thing that we did.
Well, I appreciate that. I agree. I'm humbled to have you agree to do this.
Of course. You're
So
kidding me? Yes.
but this is fun. It's always fun to talk with you and catch up, as it were.
Yes.
Um, I guess the question for me then becomes, or the question I want to ask you then is, there's a conversation going on now, right now, about we mentioned briefly, and for you, the issue of consulting fees or income, if you will.
Mhm.
And for me, I learned a lesson 25 years ago when we had my company, where at that time I started the company up where I was charging my fee, if you will, and we switched the company to charging what I call the value. Now, let me put this in perspective. I don't want to go down too far on
Yeah.
me. But what we were doing was we were coming in and installing a new system for a municipality or for an industry that basically paid for itself in energy savings and improved operating costs
Mhm.
in about 2 months. And we were charging just a standard old engineering fee and walking away, and the client was getting all the benefit. We came back and said, wait a minute, this isn't really fair to us. Why don't we start charging based on value? And so we raised our fees, raised the costs, raised the operating, more than tripled it, actually, which made a nice chunk of change in my pocket at the time. And now all of a sudden the client's paying for the project in 3 months.
Okay.
I mean, I know I said I tripled it, but that's the end of the
Mhm.
day. We tripled our fees and added a month to the payback,
Mhm.
and I didn't have a lot. I didn't have a lot of heartburn about that. Engineers, civils in particular, working for government, tend to keep their fees down low because they feel like they're working for the government, and they are, and they're working for the public, and they are, and it's public funds, and it is. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, the benefit the public gets, and we talk about public funds, as you know, when we talk about public funds, we're talking about industrial funds, economic community development funds, commercial funds. Public highways are used by trucks and commerce vehicles. The water system, sanitary, the entire civil infrastructure is used by commerce, probably more than by the public citizenry. But we
Mhm.
look for the citizenry to pay for it. I just wonder if you have any thoughts about, is there an opportunity for engineers to start charging more for what they do because it is
Mhm.
so desperately needed?
I
And
agree.
what are some
Yes.
of the things they need to be able to do to justify that extra cost?
Right. Well, as a consultant now, and like you were in that time,
Yes, I'm
definitely.
asking you to triple your fees.
Well, yeah, that would be wonderful. But definitely, when you went, and we talked about this just a few minutes ago, when you go into government work, you don't do it because you're going to be a millionaire or because you're going to
Right,
be a lot of money, right? You do it for the service. But then again, when you are providing service to the government, there are limitations on overhead, on certain rates, on the money that you can charge a government, right? And typically, because you work on reduced budgets or limited budgets, in Puerto Rico, we had a bankruptcy in the last few years. And so, charging to the government, everybody knew that it would be low fees or that the consultants couldn't charge as much. And with Kimley-Horn, we have high effort and utilization goals that are really important to us,
hmm,
to provide good service and exceptional client service to our clients. So when you have a team of people that you compensate well, that we have good benefits, health, and life insurance and all these different things, those things are important for the employee, for their performance, and also how they are working on projects, right?
hmm,
So
right,
I see it as compensation, yes, but you are paying for what you're getting. So for us, we see it as a fair amount of what we're charging and what we're giving the clients. And sometimes, yes, limiting that amount might prohibit you from having certain consultants work on your projects. And so it depends. You don't want to reduce quality, but
right,
we have to be careful with what is that the government or the state agency. Let's talk about a state agency since I led one. What is the budget that they have available? Because another thing is that what we've seen is that we all have workforce limitations, right? We have
right,
workforce capacity limitations. A lot of people are retiring, or it's difficult to recruit as well because we don't offer the salaries that the private industry can offer.
right,
So we have to be really careful as government, yes, to take care of the taxpayers money and with the budgets that we have, but not limit or strangle the consultants because we depend a lot of them as extension of staff. So it has to be fair both ways. We
yeah,
cannot take advantage of the government because we know that yes, the fees are limited and you have certain budgets. Right now in Puerto Rico, there is a lot of funding available for infrastructure work because of all the federal funding that has come in for hurricane recovery and reconstruction, and there was a lot of money that came in after the pandemic. But we have to be able to have a fair price, but also the good service. So
yeah,
it,
yeah,
it is a complicated conversation because also people are looking into, you're paying consultants more than you're paying the staff. That is a
true,
different conversation, and it is also a different situation, right?
yeah,
Because salaries of the employees versus how much you pay a consultant, they're different budgets, and also it's different responsibilities and liability as well. So all that has to be taken into consideration. But again, it's quality service that you want, and you don't want to strangle. And I would say strangle because this is what I used to tell my people: our consultants are extension of staff, so we cannot pretend that they will fund their operations. We have to pay them on time, and we have to pay them fairly for what we are asking them and the liability that they have as our consultants for design or construction or quality control.
right. Well, and and part of this is from the consulting side, is that where's, again, defining that value. If I'm going to use a couple quick analogies, hopefully quick, me, I'm probably not quick, but I'll try. uh, if if the idea is I'm hiring an engineer, civil engineer or whatever, a professional, to design a sidewalk, that's pretty straightforward, and you
Mhm.
probably might even consider using internal staff to do that. If you're trying to come up with an innovative bridge design that has a lifespan of 150 years, that's not off the shelf engineering. This is now asking for levels of creativity. And so you get into the life cycle cost of things. It's an argument, the second analogy, the argument I'm having right now, where I am with some people that I do consulting with, is they want to put down a road system that has a lifespan of about three years
Mhm.
before it has to be maintained. And so far, they haven't
Mhm.
even been able to get to that. Usually it takes 1 to 2 years before they have to go back in and start making repairs,
Mhm.
but it's cheaper.
Right.
And I've tried and tried to try and explain to them that, look, if you go in and do it the right way with the
Exactly.
right materials,
Mhm.
using modern materials, that you very likely could be looking at a 15-year to 20-year lifespan without major repairs.
Right.
And think of how much money you can save by
Mhm.
doing that.
Agreed.
Now, yeah,
And I'm an aviation engineer. That's my specialty, right? So we could go into that argument for when you're rehabilitating a runway, right? Or when you're
right,
trying to work on a specific infrastructure project on an airport. Is it, do we use this type of pavement versus this type of pavement, or different materials? And you have to think about the life of the project, but also the maintenance cost. And one
absolutely.
thing that I focused on when I was secretary, it was the maintenance part of the investment, and changing mindset that maintenance was not a cost, it was an investment, and we had not
Right.
received funding for maintenance in probably 20, 30 years, and you could see the road condition deteriorate, obviously for 20, 30 years no maintenance. And then people that are using these roads are mad, and they're mad at me as I took on the responsibility to be the secretary. So officially I was the one to blame for all the holes and the potholes on the highways. But
Well, it
it
was
was a
your fault.
situation. But you inherit everything. It doesn't matter if you were
Yeah.
there
Whether you're the
a
reason
year
or not,
or
it is
two
your fault.
days or 4 years. So my one of my priorities in public policy for the governor was, let's focus on maintenance again. And we are building a road or a bridge, particularly, or a different infrastructure project. If you, even if it was a service project, because in the DOT we also had motor vehicles, so we were maintaining digital services and digital apps so that people could have less, or didn't have to spend as much time in the DMV office. So we had every sorts of service that you can imagine, infrastructure design and construction, and we also had innovative solutions with service and people, and where we have facilities. We have a lot of things, right? So it wasn't just the roads and the bridges or the buses and the ferries and the airports. So you have to look at all of this. Is you have, if you're going to build something new, if you're going to build a road or you're going to build a bridge, then you definitely need to support the maintenance that you're going to invest in the next
Right.
3, 5, 10 years. And I think
Right.
we missed that in a lot of the projects that we had done in the last 2 decades. And that's why we have the situation that we have here. But when we talked about fees and we talk about budget, well, it depends, because maybe they plan to build a new bridge and they're like, we don't have the maintenance money to do it, but we'll find it eventually. Well, then you don't find it. So it's a really bad way of planning and to invest the money that you have.
Yeah, yeah. I know a state that actually, because they had a building project, roads project in place, and they were not getting the support they needed for the road project from the state, they actually cut back on the design of the road with the idea that the maintenance costs would take care of it in the subsequent years. In
Mhm.
other words, the asphalt they put down on the road wasn't as robust as it should have been, wasn't the
Mhm.
correct design for what it should have been. But
That's
the
exactly.
idea was that instead of waiting 20 years to go in and do an overlay project, or 15
Mhm.
years to do an overlay project, we'll just plan on an overlay project in 5 years. And that's when we'll put the final road course down. And so they gamed the system, as it were. They got the road in place, and that's exactly what they did. But on
Yeah,
the same token, that 5 years took a real toll on the road.
of
So
course.
when they did
And the
when they
cost
did the
changes.
overlay, it wasn't what it should have been.
I I agree. And there's cost changes right now with inflation, with all the natural disasters that we've had in the Caribbean. Puerto Rico is not exempt from those
No.
type of impacts. So our construction costs have grown up like about 52% since Hurricane Maria. So how do you plan? You plan for a pedestrian bridge that is going to be 3 million and it ends up coming back as 8 or 9 million. So you eventually killed your project. And
Yes.
you have to find other funding or supplemental funding, and that's not necessarily an easy thing. And we work with Federal Highway, we work with Federal Transit Authority, and all these federal projects. And there's budgets assigned for us, a certain amount of formula. So we can't just be having projects 52, 56% higher than what we expected because we're
Right.
already killing our projects. So
Right.
that type of thing impacts the way that we can work, obviously, in a state agency as it would be a private firm, right? Because if you do have all these variations in cost or fees or project costs, then you definitely get impacted. So I think it impacts both sides of the industry, but definitely with the government, I see a more volatile and more of an impact for us to be able to invest in the projects that we wanted. And that definitely affects the industry because if we cut back on projects, then there is not enough work for the engineering consultants and all these contractors that are waiting for the industry to recover.
Sustainability. Yeah. And both in terms of sustainability of the infrastructure and sustainability of the workforce needed, which is my pivot point. Um, you're aware, I know, that by and large, we see a substantial number of women leaving the AEC workforce within the first 10 years. Now, that's not unique. And I've written on it and talked about it in a number of different environments. We see the same thing in the medical profession, and we see it in other professions. I'm just wondering if, from your perspective, because I'm an old white guy, uh, from though I'm not oblivious to what the world around me and the environment around. I'm an environmental engineer, so I know what the environment is
Mhm.
and such. Being facetious, of course, but I'm paying attention, and I have paid attention for 30 years as to what happens to the people that graduate from my program and the engineers that I work with, irrespective of
Yeah.
where they come from or who they are or what their value sets are. You know, women, Latinx, African American, Asian. It doesn't matter to me. It's they're people,
Mhm.
and supporting
That's how
people.
it should
I
be.
mean,
Yeah, that's how it should
yeah,
be.
exactly.
Hmm.
But let me go, drag it back because I have you here now, and you have this perspective. Why why didn't you leave after 10 years? What do we need to be doing? Not that I'm asking you to leave. I'm trying to find out what it is we need to be doing,
Right.
particularly for women, to help
Hmm.
them succeed and not have
Right.
to leave or choose to
Agree.
leave after such a short period of time, or
Hmm.
for that matter, not even entering the workforce. I've
Right.
had I did a survey of a group of seniors that I had towards the end of my academic career, and out of all the women that graduated in that semester, none of them were working
Yeah.
as engineers or anything.
Right. Well,
So
I've seen it. I've seen it in the private industry. And Kimley-Horn has, and we didn't talk about this at the beginning, but I am back with Kimley-Horn after the DOT. Obviously, I came back
the
home.
background gives you away.
Yeah, yeah, I'm back with them. But definitely, when I was a younger engineer at Kimley-Horn, um, I was very high driven into the utilization goal, working towards my PE, finishing up my master's. I didn't have kids at that time. My husband and I are both engineers, and we always said we're going to get all these things out of the way before we start having a family, right? Get my master's, finish my PE, or get my PE, and so we timed it that way. But what I saw with my colleagues when they were ready to start a family, and you have to think about these things because you can do it
Sure.
all. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, you just can't do it all at the same time. And sometimes when we read these blogs or sometimes we go through Instagram and you see all these amazing things about women that have done it all. Yes, it takes sacrifice and priorities, and it's not like you can't balance everything, is you have to make priorities. And at the early stages of your career you work really really hard, and you just focus mostly on your job because you're growing right in the industry, you're becoming an expert in your field. And I did that. I prepared myself in the early stages of my career to do all these things that I knew required a lot of time and effort before I started to have a family. But if that doesn't happen, if you are a working mom as you're starting your career, you don't want to leave your family for your career. You know, you always want to have that balance, and sometimes that's difficult. What I
Yeah.
saw with my coworkers, many of them would have kids, and the first one, they would put the baby on daycare and they would come back and reduce time. When they had the second one, then you have two kids in daycare and reduce time, and so you get paid less, and the cost of daycare and the caregiving is very, it's a huge sacrifice. So I
Right.
remember a coworker, very qualified, great engineer, she decided to stay home with the kids because the investment of having two or three kids in daycare was way more than her salary, or she was just working to pay for daycare and not seeing her kids as much. So I never thought badly of her or that it was a mistake. That was her priorities, and she had to take care of her family. So she decided to leave the engineering workforce. She came back later when the kids were older, but she put her career on hold for a few years until she could find what would work for her and her family. That
Yeah.
happens a lot. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and you made a point, and I want to amplify it for those who are listening but missed it, and that is that, and I say this as a father. I have two daughters, as you know. Uh, I felt a personal sacrifice not being able to spend time with my daughters the way
Hmm.
I would have liked to. In
Yep.
many ways, I was primary caregiver because my wife, who worked 30 miles away from where we lived, so she
Hmm.
had a commute issue, and
Hmm.
so that there is a sacrifice that
Yes.
goes to,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
you said it on point, that at the end of the day, it's setting priorities and balancing those priorities to achieve
Absolutely.
the end goal.
Absolutely.
So
So
you
I
can't have it all.
also,
You just have to plan for it all.
I agree. You have to plan it, and does require also support from your family, from your spouse. If you're a single mom and you're an engineer, you do need a support system of friends, or what do they say? It takes a village. Well, it really does.
Yeah.
But when my in my career, did have to take a break. When I was pregnant in 2010, is when Puerto Rico, Kimley-Horn, Puerto Rico was being starting, and I did have to take a break. I had a health situation at the same time as my pregnancy, and about 2 years, I took a break in my career. I was still at Kimley-Horn. I was just in short term and long term disability. And I decided to come back after I got better and I was healthy again. And the firm supported me throughout the entire process. So that is really important as well, because you need that ecosystem, right? That to help
Right.
you and to support you, because
Right.
if not, it's really hard for women to keep going 1,000% at work and 1,000% at home, and then you get sick. You have to prioritize your health. So
Yeah.
I was clear in coming back, but I had a really, really good support system internally with my family and also with my employer. And that's probably why I'm still here.
I'm sure it's why you're still here. I personally advocate for really a different workplace environment. Now, take a deep breath, and I immediately acknowledge that of all the environments and all the employers, Kimley-Horn ranks high nationally, not just with engineering firms, within firms, as
Yes.
far as their recognition
Mhm.
of worker support and the
Right.
fact that you're human beings, not robots,
My
not
robots are numbers.
widgets.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll also say, based on the travels I did with ASC, maybe not all the Kimley-Horn offices are living up to the standard, but the corporate philosophy is
Yes.
that we do this. But let me push the envelope just a little bit,
Mhm.
recognizing that the workforce environment that we currently work in is one that basically comes from the 1950s, where it
Mhm.
was expected the guy was going to show up and work, and the wife was going, and I mean guy in the sense of the male member of the
Mhm.
married couple was going to show up at work. The female member was going to stay home, have kids, and do all the other stuff that's important for a family. And
Mhm.
the workforce environment was set up where the guy shows up, and the term when I got into this was leave the burned toast at home. You
Mhm.
leave the family, you ignore them, you focus on the work, you sacrifice family and self for the sake of the job. That's stupid. It just is. And but it's the environment that in many cases still exists today. For example, I don't think there are
Mhm.
too many companies, if any. I'm not laying this at your door or Kimley-Horn's door, but I don't think there's. I've never heard of a company doing an interview of a guy and saying, "Are you going to need childcare?
Right.
Do we
Well,
need
and
to
I think
provide
that's
you
definitely,
childcare so that you can work here?"
It's definitely changing, but I think that in the United States, particularly, there's still a lot of room for improvement. Because other
Yeah.
countries, a lot of countries
Excellent
use.
point. Thank you very much. Okay.
Yes, because a lot of countries you see, like in European countries, where paternity leave and maternity leave are very similar or the same benefits for both the mother and the father, or that
Yeah.
you have time. And when you have a child, you have actual time, sometimes 12 months to take care of this child. And so they've matched, and I think that was in the news the other day, where they've matched the father leave, the paternity leave to maternity leave, because at the same time this has to work for both of us, right? And the
Right. Right.
1950s are totally different what we have now in 2025. Women are out there working, women are chiefs of households as well. We have significant jobs in leading companies and board of directors in government and private, anywhere, right? That's not
Right.
unusual. We still have ways to go, but it's definitely something that is not unusual anymore. I think there will be a time where we don't have to publish, this is the first female engineer to lead the Puerto Rico Department of Transportation. Well, I broke that. Right now, the next one will be
Yeah,
the
I was
second.
gonna say that's too late to publish that one. It's going to have to be the second.
When the second one comes around, probably it's not going to say second women to lead the Puerto Rico Department of Transportation. That changes,
Yeah,
but there has
or they
to
might
be.
say this is only our second one, as
This is
in,
only our second
we
one. Well,
finally
that's a
got
big
around to
deal.
another one. Yeah,
It's a
it's
big deal. Being the first is always hard. I'm
yeah,
the first engineer in my family as well. So I didn't have the support or the knowledge of what the engineering workforce was like because I was the first one in my family. Now my nephew is going into engineering school in about a year, and so he's seen me and he's inspired and he loves the
good,
what he's learning, right? What
good.
engineers do. My
Yeah,
daughter as well. She does STEM programs, and so it's not as uncommon anymore to be like, oh, I can do that. My aunt did it or my mom did it, so why not?
right,
But it always
right.
requires somebody to break, right, and be the pioneer and break the mold or the glass ceiling or whatever other ceiling that we have. And I think that I'm not unique into what I've done because so many other women before me have already paved that path, and I know I can do it because I've seen all these other women that can. And so it always takes that first step of being really brave. And even if you don't see people that look like you, then you become the role model, right? And that's not easy because it's a lot of responsibility. But when you're motivated and you've had a lot of opportunities like I've had, then you feel that need to give it back. So to me, it wasn't just about being the first woman. It was what was I gonna do in my role, and not separate myself from my predecessors that were all men. But yes, you kind of get that highlight on your head, that focus light, be like a spotlight of, okay, what is she gonna do because she's the first woman, and you're like, I am, but I'm an engineer just like them.
Yeah,
And I've also have budget challenges like they did. I did have a better situation with all the funding that we had, but nobody that had been sitting in that chair was a mom. And so when I was there and my daughter was sick, or my daughter had a theater performance or whatever she had, I always said, and also talked to the governor that was very supportive, Governor Pierluisi, if I need to go and be with my daughter, she's always going to come first. So they were very supportive and
good
they
for you.
understood. Yeah, and you have to set the boundaries in the beginning and not feel guilty for doing that. And Kimley-Horn, we've done really well in the last few years because we've started what is called Lift. And Lift is a program for women to stay in the field because they were seeing this that you're mentioning, right? That women will come up to a certain point of their careers, have a family, and go. Because it was difficult to stay as a Kimley-Horn high effort, high utilization goal and have a family and be good at both things. Well,
Right,
Kimley-Horn understood that and valued their engineers, all of them, the female and the males, and has worked on making it more inclusive, but also more opportunities. And yes, when you are a new mom at Kimley-Horn and you might go in flexible time or reduced time, well, it takes a little bit longer to pair up again to your colleagues, but the opportunity is there. It doesn't mean that you have to leave your kid and forget that you're a mother and work as
right,
if you don't have any children. That
right.
Kimley-Horn doesn't do that. And I think that was really great. This program started in 2014 as I was starting the Puerto Rico Kimley-Horn office. So, these opportunities have to be also within the firm and within the company because we can be as high achievers and as responsible and brave as we can. But if the
Right.
support isn't there, you're gonna get discouraged, and doesn't matter how much money they pay you, you're eventually gonna go. You're gonna be like, "This is
Well,
I can't do this."
the
That
stresses on you as a mother and a wife or partner or whatever the situation you're coming from, there's enough stress in that as there is, and then the workforce stress. And if somebody isn't accommodating, and you used the term early on in the conversation, being supportive
Yes,
and
absolutely. Mhm,
facilitating your success,
mhm.
and that's all part of it. I think it's wonderful. One of the arguments always is that when women, let's say, have to leave because they get to the point where it's have children or don't have children,
You
they
have to
get to that
choose.
point in their
Mhm.
life and they've put it off to the point where they can't put it off anymore. The onboarding, the reboarding is the way I call it, but they
Mhm.
call it onboarding when after a couple 3 years the child's at the point where you can put it in daycare care and it sorry but anyway, and the idea is, okay, I've lost those couple 3 years. Do I have to start over at the beginning? Do I pick up where I left off? Am I
Right.
supposed to be where I was if I had never taken off?
Mhm.
And sometimes the expectations aren't realistic or clear. If I've got to start all over again, that's not fair because I'm still the same
Agree,
person.
agree.
Yeah, and at the same time,
Agree.
if you expect me to be where I would have been
Mhm.
3 years from now, as
Right.
if I had never taken off, that's not fair either because I didn't live the last 3 years in
Yeah.
that environment. But what you're doing with the flex time
Mhm.
and providing opportunities to remain
Mhm.
engaged to varying levels
Right.
keeps the motors running, keeps the
I agree.
rust off.
Also, you're different once you have life-changing experiences like what I went through when I became a mom, because I did have the health situation that changed
Right,
everything.
right,
Your priorities change, but you also change, and you have a level of maturity and priorities that are different, and that is okay. That can be complementary to your job. And
right,
we are a people business. We're not just about the numbers, the utilization, the construction, or the consultant work. You are an extension of staff, but it's a people business. you
that's right.
are you are working with relationships with your clients are your colleagues or your friends as well. So I think that when you, as a woman, we are very good at multitasking, which sometimes it can lead to burnout, so we got to be very careful about that. But the empathy and the organization and priorities and the way that we think and we perform, it's different from men, and it's good to have diversity in the team. So I believe that our firm has seen that and values that. And that's why they've done these different programs for the women in practice to be able to be successful as well and not feel that because they're mothers or caregivers, because it doesn't even have to be when you have children,
True,
you might have aging
absolutely
parents
true.
that you have to
Yeah,
take care of. Well, there is value in having that diverse workforce and the different perspectives, and we are a better company because of the workforce that we have, and it has to
right,
be diverse. So definitely the employer has to be investing in these type of programs and be intentional about it. It doesn't just happen. There has to be a platform, and there has to be a system that supports the women in practice not to leave, and to be able to be successful and feel that they're contributing as well, even if they don't work 80 hours a week.
right. Well, and for that matter, I argue that I've seen women do more in 40 hours than men do in 60, for any of a long list of reasons. And it's environment, it's support, it's whatever else. We're basically run out of time, Eileen, and so. Uh, but I want to give you kind of a last chance to sum up and emphasize. Maybe a matter of focusing on what you would like to say to a younger you, or maybe all those other younger yous that are out there that are listening
Right.
to you right now.
Right. Well, I think, and I always say this, self initiative is really important. Not waiting for someone to tell you what to do and where you do it. It is good to have mentors. It's very important. Dr. Truex is one of my mentors from many years ago, and I've had both men and women be my mentors in my career. I've been in the industry for about 23 years, and you also have to be flexible in change. It's changed for me. It was federal. It was private. I moved to my back to my island and then worked in different projects. I was an aviation engineer, but being on the island, I was an aviation everything. I mean, an engineer of everything. And so having that flexibility for also learning new things and being able to work on the small projects as well as the big ones. They say there's no small projects. From every project, you will learn something.
Right.
Also, you have to be very intentional about your network. Networking is important, and it's not that you have an agenda to meeting people,
Mm,
but your network is important for you to go into places where you probably never thought about. People mentioned me and mentioned my name when I wasn't even around for the job that I just finished for my role as secretary. And I was very grateful for that. But you build on that reputation by having good communication skills, a good attitude towards work, and also being kind. don't want to be someone difficult to work with. So even though I was firm and a really good hard worker and I knew my stuff, because when I go into a project, I was a project manager, I was the engineer, I had to show them that I was good and I wasn't there just because I was a diversity hire or what I look like or whatever else. No, you
Yeah.
got to know your stuff. So you have to become
Yeah.
an expert in your field and be able to show what you're good at and how you can contribute to that project. So just be brave. Yes, we can have hesitation. Yes, we can be afraid. I was afraid the last 4 years, being in front of the media, working with the governor, all the different challenges that we have. You can be afraid. You can't let the fear stop you. And I've never let it stop me. Because if
Yeah.
I did, then I would probably not leave my house. so,
Yeah.
so that's part of what I would love to tell my younger self. And also to not be as hard on myself as I am, because I think that we're harder on ourselves than anybody else, and we criticize ourselves, and we we just go into this with the worst case scenario too often, and sometimes that hurts us more than it helps us, right? So I would
Yeah.
tell her that. I would tell her to relax. You're going to
Well,
be just
your academic training taught you to focus on the failures, uh,
yes,
but
and
what we
problem
need to do,
solving.
yeah. But once you get out into real life, you need to focus on the wins.
Yes,
You know,
true. Yes,
celebrate
and
the win.
celebrate them. Yeah, and
Yeah.
celebrate them.
Yeah.
And it's okay to do that. Yes, and it is
Right.
okay to, like you said on social media, when I have something good to say and to publish, I do. And that's a good thing because you are the best advocate for yourself. You cannot wait for someone else to publish the good news about you. You're the one that cares the most about your success. You should be the one that cares the
Right.
most about your success. And as long
Right.
and we can have mentors and great fans like you and cheerleaders, but at the end of the day, you are the one responsible for your success, for your career, and for everything that you do.
Right. Very good. Eileen, I really appreciate you taking time to share. I know you had a busy day, and for that matter, you've been traveling a lot, reestablishing corporate connections. That networking piece plays right along with what I advocate with regard to getting involved in your professional organizations within your company organizations. And of course, then I always advocate for ASCE and
Of
look for
course, but
opportunities to network there.
I do have a 14-year-old daughter that's graduating from 8th grade, going to high school,
Yeah.
and yes, definitely that's another part of my day, right? That one of the most important ones. But
Yeah.
you don't want to be a great engineer and do all these amazing things and then have an issue at home.
Yeah.
So learning how to be the best mom for Anna, and at the same time as continuing to be great at my job and a pioneer and a high achiever. Yes, the balance is not real. You juggle things.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
some things go around and sometimes you have to take some sacrifices at home, but most of the time, you just switch up your priorities as needed, sometimes many times during the day. So we have
Yeah.
to also be flexible and not as hard on ourselves as that. And
Yeah.
yeah, but definitely the family and your health has to come first, because if you're sick, that's it. The rest of it, somebody else
Yeah.
is going to take care of it.
That's right. Yeah.
We
You
have
got
to
to
take
take
it.
care of the whole being.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. Well, to wrap it up, folks, for those of you that tuned in and have been watching the conversation, listening to what we were saying, thank you for spending time with us. As always, we leave you today with the idea that we hope that the time you've invested in the conversation pays dividends for you. We're trying to help you, trying to share our perspectives so that you don't have to go through what we've gone through to get where we've gotten, so that you can be even more successful than we would hope that you would hope. And in that regard, have a great day. Hope you keep tuning in, and thanks.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Infrastructure Network.